I didn't lose my relationship in a fight. No shouting, no slammed doors, no final argument. If anything, it ended quietly. So quietly that by the time I realized what was happening, I was already alone in something that used to feel shared. Hi, this is Breakup Diaries. And this story is about what happens when you don't get pushed out. You just slowly stop being included. Because if I'm being honest, it didn't feel wrong in the beginning. Moving in with Rowan felt like the next step. We had talked about it for months. I planned it. Built this idea of a future that made sense for both of us. And for a while it worked. We had our routines. Quiet evenings. The kind of comfort that doesn't need to be explained. It wasn't perfect, but it felt stable. Like we were building something real. Then his family started coming over more often. Initially, it felt normal. They were welcoming. Warm in a way that made it easy to relax around them. I thought it was a good sign. That I was being accepted into something bigger. But over time, the visits changed. They stayed longer. Came more frequently. Until it stopped feeling like they were visiting at all. They had opinions about everything. How the house should look. How things should be done. Even how we should manage our lives. And Rowan. He didn't question it. Not once. I felt it wasn't a problem. That this was just how families worked. That I was overthinking it. But looking back now, that was the moment everything started to shift. At some point, their opinions stopped feeling like suggestions. They became direction. Not loudly. Not in a way that was easy to call out. But enough that I started noticing the shift. It began with small things. How we arranged the living room. What we bought for the house. Even what we ate some nights. His mother would say something casually like, "This would make more sense." And Rowan would agree. Immediately. No pause. No discussion. At first, I didn't mind. I told myself it was harmless. That he was just being respectful. That this was how close families worked. But then it moved into things that felt bigger. Finances. Plans. Decisions that should have involved both of us. I started hearing things after they had already been discussed. Not with me. Around me. Or worse, without me. And when I asked about it, Rowan would explain it like it was already settled. Like the conversation had happened. Like my input wasn't necessary. We talked about it earlier, he would say. Away. That word started to sound different. Because it didn't include me anymore. It meant him and them. I tried to speak up. Not confrontational. Just present. But every time I did, it felt like I was stepping into something that had already been decided. Like I was late to a conversation I was supposed to be part of. And slowly, I started doing something I didn't even realize at the time. I started holding back, choosing silence over pushing, because pushing felt like creating problems, and I didn't want to be seen as difficult. But the more I stepped back, the easier it became for them to step in. I didn't notice the moment it happened. There was no clear line, no single event that marked the change. But somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like I lived there and started feeling like I was just there. The house still looked the same. My things were still in it. My routines hadn't disappeared completely. But something underneath all of that had shifted. Conversations started happening around me. Not with me. Plans were made in rooms I wasn't part of. Decisions were finalized before I even knew they existed. And when I did find out, it was always explained in a way that felt finished. Like there was nothing left to add. I started noticing how often I adjusted myself. Speaking less. Asking fewer questions. Avoiding anything that might turn into disagreement. Because every time I did try to push back, it felt like I was outnumbered. Not aggressively. Just quietly. His family didn't argue. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. They had already established their place. And Rowan. He moved with them. Not against me. But not for me either. Just with them. And that was the part that stayed with me. Because it wasn't loud betrayal. It wasn't obvious rejection. It was something harder to explain. I was still in the house. Still part of the relationship. But I no longer felt chosen. And once that feeling starts to fade, everything else follows. The moment that changed, everything didn't come with a warning. It didn't build up in a way I could prepare for. It just happened. I found out by accident. Not through Rowan. Not through a conversation we had together. But through something his mother mentioned casually. Like it was already understood. Like I was already aware. They had made a decision. A major one. About our future. About money. About where things were going next. And I hadn't been part of it. At first, I thought I misunderstood. That maybe I had missed something. So I asked him. Calmly. Directly. And the way he answered told me everything I needed to know. We just thought it made more sense this way. Away. Not I. Not us. Away. And in that moment, something in me shifted completely. Because it wasn't just about the decision. It was about what it represented. I wasn't part of the we anymore. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way that defined the future we were supposed to be building together. I stood there trying to process it. Trying to understand how something so big could happen without me. And how easily he could say it. Like it was normal. Like it didn't change anything. But it changed everything. Because for the first time, I saw the relationship clearly. Not how I felt it. Not how I wanted it to be. But what it actually was. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I didn't confront him immediately. I needed a moment to think. Not to calm down, but to understand what I was about to say. Because this wasn't about arguing. It wasn't about winning a point. It was about clarity. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised me. It was steady, controlled, almost detached. Do I still have a place here? He looked at me like he didn't expect the question. Or maybe like he hadn't considered it at all. There was a pause. A long one. And in that pause, I realized something before he even answered. He didn't know. Or worse, he didn't think about it the way I did. I don't understand what you mean, he said. But he did. He just didn't want to say it out loud. This doesn't feel like my home anymore, I said. It's still calm. It's still controlled. And it doesn't feel like we're making decisions together. Another pause. Another hesitation. He didn't argue. Didn't deny it. Didn't correct me. And that silence said more than anything he could have said. Because it wasn't confusion. It wasn't disagreement. It was avoidance. And in that moment, I understood something I had been avoiding for too long. If he wanted to choose me, he would have. If he wanted to protect what we had, he wouldn't have let it get this far. But he didn't. And that was my answer. Leaving didn't feel dramatic. There was no final argument. No breaking point that forced me out. It felt quiet. Like something that had already happened emotionally. Finally catching up physically. I didn't pack everything at once. I didn't rush. I just started removing myself from a place that no longer felt like mine. Piece by piece. Conversation by conversation. Until there was nothing left holding me there. Rowan didn't stop me. He didn't ask me to stay. Didn't fight for it. And somehow, that made it easier. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. This wasn't something he was trying to fix. It was something he had already accepted. Time passed. Distance made things clearer. Not easier, just clearer. I stopped questioning whether I had overreacted. Stopped wondering if I should have tried harder. Because the truth was simple. You don't fight to stay somewhere you're not being chosen. And eventually, the truth became visible to other people too. Not all at once. Not loudly. Just slowly. In the way patterns reveal themselves over time. Some people reached out later. Said they noticed things. Said it didn't feel right. Said they understood now. I listened. I didn't argue. But none of it changed anything. Because when it mattered, They said nothing. The family had a position on us before we had one on ourselves. We spent 4 years trying to catch up to a verdict already delivered.